two, 1 2, a 1 2, a 1 2, 1 2.
You are now listening to Lush Radio Online.
Hey yo, my name be Fife Diggy, and yes I get busy throwing lyrics at your behind like a MF and Frisbee. Got tipped by my side to the left.
What?
And we love this beat by Teddy Ted.
Well, particular about who they picked to lead properly. So.
Well, that's the thing. It's like I don't think either one of us can say that we were picked as much as chosen as it, like fate and God and intervention, because there's so many different ways it could have gone and so many different things that happened. But I think, from my perspective, they had already announced the fact that they were going to do the hero, not the defenders, the street level heroes. They already announced that they were going to do, separate shows with Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, and Iron Fist. And around the time that they were looking for someone to run Luke Cage, or even kind of talking about is there anyone that can even write it, was right around the time I left Ray Donovan. And so I just asked for a meeting and was lucky enough to get the meeting. And, I guess they sensed my passion. And I was lucky enough to they kept asking me back. And, it's basically an audition. By the time that process was finished, and I got the gig, I worked on the first 2 scripts and just tried to modernize the character in a way that also stayed true to the comic. And then as it begins to build, it's basically like a snowball rolling downhill, because what happens is that, once you get the scripts approved and people really dig what you're doing with the character, then you build a writer's room and then at the same time start casting. We were lucky enough that we already had Mike and Coulter, who plays Luke Cage, and then because he was already cast on Jessica Jones, and when they liked the treatment and they liked the way the scripts were going, they decided to reverse order, because Iron Fist was possibly going to go first, but then they liked what we were doing, and they also had such momentum off of Jessica Jones that we got the call, and everything came together. And the second that Simone came in off tape and then gave her audition, we knew that we had Misty Knight, and that's why we're here.
You're doing an amazing job, because I'm a big comic book fan and I love Marvel. And I think, CHEO, you did an amazing job creating this, this whole storyline, because from the original storyline, now we're getting more of a backstory of Luke Cage. And I first watched Jessica Jones, and I've seen him being introduced into Marvel, and then seeing this spinoff, I'm just amazed. And then you being like one of the first, for like more of like the underground era of the Marvel comics, being that female hero that we're looking for. And besides, Storm, but I mean, you're amazing in what you're doing.
It's bad.
Stuff. Yeah. And the outfit, oh my God. Like, I mean, because we went from, her with the bionic arm and everything like that, an original comic book and stuff like that. And you're just kicking a lot of butt. And your partner, you guys have this real good chemistry. Talk to me about that.
A lot of it was written by CHEO, just the rapport between the two of them and the back and forth. But, Frank is an amazing, seasoned actor. He's been around for over 30 years. And he just came to work ready to play, and I came to work ready to play, and we would literally just play on set. Sometimes when it comes to cop roles on TV, it can get to be very procedural, and he went that way and that way, and because CHEO had worked on Southland, he understood that it's more about relationship than anything. It's not about the crime. It's not like a Law and Order or a CSI where the crime is the show. This is about the people. And so he would write these things and allow for us to come in and improv and, throw some humor in there. Frank and I, we both really like comedy. So we thought that we were doing like a sitcom, really.
Well, I mean, and that's really the crazy thing about homicide detectives. Is homicide detectives, in a weird way, they're like comedians. Not that they're not that they don't take the job seriously. It's that murder and seeing all that death is so hard on their psyche. The only way that they can deal with it and deal with each other is to kind of look at whatever dark humor they can find in the situation. So it's a kind of, weird voice. And so, perfect example, like when you watch The Wire, like Bumpy and McNulty are hilarious, even though you can also tell that they're deeply dedicated to their jobs. And that was the thing about what both Simone and Frank did was that they never approached it with humor. They would always have this sense of this natural rhythm where you really felt they were partners and you felt like they've been working together for years. It was really amazing watching it happen. I mean, from the table read, it was like, wow. And then once we actually got on set, it just kept getting deeper.
The chemistry is magical. That's all I can say in regards to that.
Do we think that this show will then lead to a film? Is that
yes,
that
because I think it should.
That is really honestly above our pay grade. And the reason I say that is because Marvel, as open a company as they are, they're also very controlling of how their procedures go.
Right.
So at the same time, they appreciate the enthusiasm. There's literally, like when you talk about plans and how things go, it literally is, they've thought years ahead.
Right.
And so I think what's cool is that we appreciate the enthusiasm that this show is getting from Marvel fans, both the film stuff and the TV stuff. And what's cool is that, like, if you're a geek, this is like mega.
Yes.
And if you're also, the thing about our show, it's like we're also part of this new continuum of what I consider just like unapologetic woke black shows.
Right.
So it's like we managed to be a superhero show, and then at the same time are part of the same continuum as Atlanta and Clean Sugar and Power. And
Right.
so it's really a great time to be a geek. It's also a great time to be black entertainment.
Exactly.
You know.
And I just wanted to know, like, how do you feel about sort of these different variations of blackness we're seeing on television right now, and how your show fits into that?
Well, here's the thing. It's like, this is really one of the first opportunities for us to show the subtleties and nuance and differences of blackness. You know, and so this is my thing. Is like when Francis Ford Coppola did The Godfather. Before he directed it, the book was really popular. Mario Puzo wrote it. And when Peter Bart and Robert Evans were looking for somebody to produce it, they said, wait a minute, the reason all these other previous mob movies have tanked is because no one Italian was actually making these movies. And maybe if somebody Italian comes to it, they can add things that might not be obvious to someone who's not Italian. So when Francis Ford Coppola combined, wrote the screenplay with Mario Puzo and then directed that movie, The Godfather, he brought the music to it. He brought different cultural stuff that wasn't necessarily in the book that made it real. And for the opportunity that was given to us for this show is that I think from the very beginning it was important, and Marvel and Netflix supported me on this, that Luke Cage be a black superhero, not a superhero that happens to be black. Mm-hmm. And so, I'm a deep every Wednesday comic book kind of guy. So
yes.
I wanted the geek stuff to be real and to make sense, but at the same time, I didn't want it just to happen, have black stuff. I wanted it to be like he lives in a real place. Uh-huh. And because the way Marvel has always worked is that Marvel characters, they don't live in Metropolis, they don't live in Gotham City, exactly. They live in the real world. And so here's an opportunity to have Harlem, which to me is kind of like the Washington, D.C. and Vegas in one spot. Mm-hmm. And then you have music and politics and a bulletproof black man and, what's going on today. No matter where you point the camera, you got an interesting story. And when you have a cast like this, when you have Simone kicking so much ass
yes.
when you have Alfred Woodard doing things you've never seen her do before, when you have Mahershala Ali playing such a formidable villain. I mean, I think he's the baddest black villain since Nino Brown. Mm-hmm. And then you've got Mike Coulter, who so encompasses, Luke Cage. I mean, that's why I look so tired, because I've watched all these episodes since they've been made. Multiple times. Yeah. Here it is, I'm awake at 3 o'clock in the morning, watching it for the first time. Yeah. When everyone else is watching it. And then even I found myself going to the next episode. Yeah. I binge watched 5 episodes. I'm only slept for about 45 minutes.
Wow.
It's just, the show is so rewatchable. Yeah. I mean, it's just the enthusiasm. It's just like, I think everyone feels what I feel. That's what's so funny, is I'm too close to it, but everyone else feels the same way about the show.
Well, at the end of the day, it's your baby. Yeah. So, I mean, you're going to feel that personal connection with it. And, it being in Hell's Kitchen, where we have all these wonderful, heroes coming out of, Heroes for Hire, which actually in the comic book, you guys actually started, Simone, as her character, started that up. And it's definitely a real big thing. You guys pull out emotion. You guys, most characters don't really want their powers, at the time, so they're still trying to live that regular life and still trying to deal with everyday society. And we see that darkness at the same time. We see those hard hitting issues that you guys are dealing with. Now, as the whole Luke Cage series is going and stuff like that, what do you think is the biggest highlight for you guys in this series?
You want to hit that one?
You mean the highlight within the show?
Yeah, within the show.
Honestly, I think it's the musical influence on the show. To have Adrian Young and Ali Shaheed Muhammad, as our musical directors who composed a soundtrack for the show, who used a 30-piece orchestra to tell a story.
Wow.
You do not see that. Mm-hmm. It's not just sample here and, use this very popular hip-hop song. And how specific they and CHEO have been about what songs are used. I know when the trailer was coming out, there was a song that they had, picked, that someone else had picked, other than those three people. And they were like, that's not the song to go with this trailer for this show. Everything is so specific. And so you feel like, as an actor, it's almost like you're a part of a musical, but your art is being treated with such a high regard, because Black culture should be treated with a high regard, and our work should be held to a higher standard. And so it feels like you're watching a 13-hour movie with this amazing soundtrack that someone cared very much about creating. And then the musical guests that we have. Like, it's not happenstance. It's, picking people who are significant to Black culture, hip-hop culture,
people relate
blues, soul singing. It's just that people can relate to. So I think that the music is the highlight for me, because that's the element that I didn't see while we were filming, but you get to watch.
Well, that's the thing. It's like culture is another special effect, and I guess in a way this is bulletproof lemonade.
Nice.
Shit.
The thing is like,
he just got all the hashtags today. Badass bulletproof blackness was the first one, and now we got bulletproof lemonade.
Because the thing about it is like I'm as influenced by that energy. Like when you look at something like Lemonade, which is, yes, there are music videos, but there's also a lot of
visual album,
deeper themes.
Visual album.
This was definitely, in terms of how we structured these 13 episodes, we structured it like an album. Because back in the day when Prince would drop a record, or some of the records I grew up with as a kid, because I'm old, I'm 43, so I'm old enough to remember when Songs of the Kid Life came out, and how much that record played a role in my life. That's how people binge watch, and so this thing has a structure and a rhythm to it. And so that's why I think that's why people are still watching right now, is because you can't stop watching it, and because it's rhythmically put like that. And also, I got to go back to some of my literary references. The book Blues People, written by Leroy Jones, who of course changed his name to Amir Baraka. The whole premise of that book was that music always had a function in African society. There was music for prayer, there was music for work, there was music for every single aspect. There was no separation between, okay, I'm going to work. It all kind of blended together. So when we were stolen and we came against our will to this country, the only thing that we were able to preserve, since we couldn't preserve our names, since we couldn't preserve our tribal lineage, was the music, was the rhythm. And so the African becomes American when he stops thinking about his homeland, and then in the blues starts talking about his problems today. And so the thing about this show is that no matter what we do, we have a rhythm in everything that we do. And so it was about tapping into that undercurrent, and also at the same time telling the superhero story. And on top of that, also telling the story of what it is to kind of have this double consciousness. And so you add all that together, you have a show that can very much still be a superhero story. But when you add the music, when you add the other cultural relevance to it, it takes it to another plane. And so I think that's what's cool about this, is that people are going to constantly rewatch the show. Because the only disadvantage of binge watching is that after you're 13 over, it's like, oh man, we gotta wait until it comes out.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things like that you rewatch. And here's the thing about Netflix: it's like Narcos to me is like I'm addicted to that show. Like I've seen season 1 like 3 times. I'm just getting ready to finish season 2. It just sucks you in, and when you watch that show, there's always something else that you missed. And I'm hoping that people have the same reaction to this show because we do lean into the geek stuff. This is a fun show. I know everyone's talking about the topicality, Black Lives Matter, woke superhero, which we embrace, but it's still a geek show. But if you want to see the other stuff, it's there.
They have everything combined, basically.
And what's cool is I'm also seeing stuff like people are like they're now downloading the books that we talk about.
Yeah.
So it's having all these different effects, and that's really, I think, one of the most fun parts for me.
I'm sorry, but when it comes to Netflix, when you speak about Netflix, the question I had in regards to streaming, and now that we're advancing and now they're integrating the TVs to streaming now, where you can open up the boxes. Because I had a meeting with one of the conferences, they were talking about just spreading out options for viewers now. How do you feel that social media and Netflix alone, these different Hulu, have advanced for producers and people like that in order to stream to the masses?
Well, you can watch anything that you want when you want. When I was a kid, I learned how to tell time from what my grandmother watched on TV. 1 o'clock was All My Children, 2 o'clock was One Life to Live. You know what I'm saying? Like, I learned. Nowadays, when I talk to my kids, they don't know what time anything comes on. All they know is that when they want to watch Teen Titans, they can go and all episodes are there. Mm-hmm. So you can't program television the same way that you used to. What Netflix takes advantage of is basically people with their phones, with their tablets, with their lifestyle. They want to watch what they want to watch when they want to watch it. And it flows right into that. So that's why you have this natural integration with Twitter and Instagram about when a show is on, how people react to it. And it just basically is part of their life. And that's really the advantage. Marvel is the brand. Netflix has the resources. So it's like peanut butter and jelly coming together. Boom. It's all right there.
And I do want to ask, because you did touch on the basis of it incorporating kind of the Black Lives Matter movement, and not per se, but at least it touches a lot of the different issues that are going on right now that people want to bring to awareness. And I know, Simone, as Misty inside the show, it was actually quite refreshing to see your partner and the different conflicts between the two of you, because it showed, I guess, an issue inside the community where they say that maybe a cop comes from the outside and he doesn't know how to relate to the people in the neighborhood. But Misty in the show, she was able to relate to everybody. She even had, I don't want to have too many spoilers, like she had her own star on the basketball court. Yeah. And with that, like, you knew she was from the neighborhood. So when she approached people, that's how she could walk into certain places and talk to them and relate to them, and they were offended.
They were in D.C. My aunt and my uncle were both cops here. My aunt was a detective for over 20 years here in D.C., and my uncle was a cop. And so I grew up looking at them like they were aliens, being completely confused that black people would choose to be police officers. I grew up in Detroit, which is a predominantly black city. I never had any negative interaction with the police, but I certainly didn't look to police to help me in times of crisis or trouble. You always look at police as escalating a situation. And so to play this character who actually becomes a cop because she saw her community not being served in the way that she felt they should, is somebody who looks at a problem and says, I'm going to be a part of the solution, as opposed to saying, I'm going to just be upset at the problem. And it is a surreal situation to be in as an actor, especially when every day that you're going to set, you're reading that another black man or a black woman has lost their lives at the hands of police. Missy is a character who does not wholeheartedly trust the system. She trusts her ability to mete out justice within that system. And I think that in this day and time when we are watching so much misunderstanding and small-mindedness play out in deadly ways with men and women in our community, you do recognize that if you had cops who came from a community they are policing, they look at those people as being citizens and not criminals. We are all citizens of this United States, and yet black people are traditionally looked at as less than, as inhuman, as automatic criminals who are doing wrong and need to be jailed, arrested, put down, and killed. And just if you watch the relationship between Misty and Luke, she could arrest him. She has every right to arrest him. She has no desire to see another black man put behind bars. For what? And I think that that's the difference of being from a place and recognizing, okay, Chauncey is just a little kid who plays pickup ball on Saturdays, and those boys used to hang out at the rec center, and I know their mama from church. It's that as opposed to who are those young black men over there with their pants sagging who are probably up to no good.
Right.
And if we have more of that in our communities, I think that we would see less men and women dying at the hands of the aggressor.
Well, one of the things, some people know about my background, not just as a journalist, but also as a television writer, is I used to write for the show Southland. And, one of my closest friends is a SWAT detective by the name of Mario Cortez. And one thing that Mario taught us, meeting myself and Michael Cutlitz and Regina King and Sean Hattasey and Ben McKenzie on that show, is that cops come from the human race. So just like all human people, you've got good cops, and you also have, like Mario would say, cops who can't find their ass with both hands. And you also have people that are just complete assholes. And so the one thing I wanted to do with the police work on this show is make sure that you had various kinds of cops, not with different agendas, but different perspectives. And so very much like what Simone is talking about, there is one version of policing that is community-based, and when you understand, the neighborhood and you approach people as people, and then you have the occupied army approach. And so what happens sometimes, a lot of times, and the reason you're seeing so many of these shootings is you have an attitude within law enforcement of any kind of non-compliance is viewed as aggression. And then because of that, and because of the training that they have, any kind of non-compliance is met with deadly force. And so I think that's one of the things that makes this show topical, is because when you have a bulletproof black man, part of what we do with this show is explore how does the ecology of a neighborhood change when you have a bulletproof black man? How does that change law enforcement? How does that change the criminal side? I mean, we're telling really a superhero story, but we're still dealing with a lot of things that happen. And when you see the overall arc, and what's great is that we can finally talk, not spoilery, but we can kind of get into deeper because people can watch the whole 13 episodes. You really begin to see this evolution of Luke being the outsider who basically begins to finally accept that he's a hero. You watch Misty's evolution of being someone who's definitely a sister, but also a cop, and like Simone said, trusting of the system's ability to get things done, to by the end of her arc is not as sure. And you also have somebody like Mariah Dillard, Alfred Woodard's character, who is very much a part of the establishment and is trying to avoid the criminality of her family. But by the end, is like it's something else. And that's really what's interesting about this show is you can't make any one character fit in any certain stereotype of what they are, what you think they're going to be. But ultimately, when people want to call this show the Black Lives Matter superhero show, my feeling about that is that all black literature, all black music has always tried to enhance our humanity. And so Black Lives Matter, yes, the hashtag is new, but the themes that we deal with with that, if you look at the literature and poetry of Langston Hughes, you look at Zora Neale Hurston, Richard Wright, Ralph Ellison, even, Chester Himes's, whether it's, the cop stuff with Confident and Gravedigger Jones or some of his other novels, James Baldwin, of course, all of that deals with Black lives mattering and making people realize our humanity. So it's like, yes, the hashtag is new, but I feel that all black art, seeks to do that.
I think that things are getting better as far as roles that black women are getting to play.
I feel incredibly honored to be a part of what I feel like is this new wave of television and film where you see our stories mattering. And it is because we have people like CHEO, COKER, and Ava DuVernay, and, who are using their years of experience and their talent in order to see our stories told truthfully. You can see nuanced characters. You can see the myriad of the black experience because those are writers and directors who recognize that there is no one blackness. There is no singular way to be black. And I think traditionally in TV and film we've seen there is only one way. or we've only had one director or one producer or one filmmaker who told the story. And so we all look at that story as having to be perfect and having to represent the totality of blackness. So as a black actor, I feel honored. As a black woman, I feel especially honored to be playing this kind of character who has such power and vulnerability. And there's so many different levels to who she is, because you do not get that opportunity traditionally. And it comes from having a man who was raised by a black mama, who's got a black wife, who appreciates black women in the way that he does. And so the story is honest and it's real. I hope that it continues to get better in our industry. But we go through waves, and right now the wave of black people being hot is being lifted up by our society. It's a pushback from Oscar So White, and yet, do I think it's long standing? I don't know. I hope so, but I can't tell the future.
Well, see, the only thing I'll say is that this show was what I call inclusively black, meaning that it's a black show. We don't hide from that. We're proud of that. But at the same time, while focusing on our culture and also focusing on a superhero story, we do it in such a way that even if people come into this thing thinking like, is this a story that I can relate to? I think by the first 15 minutes, the answer is yes, because we pull everybody in, and Luke's evolution is something everyone can relate to. The same with Misty's arc, and even to a certain extent, when you get deep in Cottonmouth, he has interesting elements, and so that's the whole thing. Is that one of the things you want to prove is that you can tell a story that has a lot of different cultural elements, but still, I think, plays very universally, and it's really very exciting. What's up? I'm CHEO COKER, the creator and executive producer of Marvel's Luke Cage.
And I'm Simone Missick, who stars as Misty Knight in Luke Cage.
And you're listening to Lush Radio.